This is Lesson 3, the Assyrian and Persian Empires. Please go to your Google Classroom, open your Lesson 3 e-text. When you do that, this is what you will see. If you split screen it and this part is covering your words, please make sure to just click the right blue arrow and move it out of your way, and then you will be able to see the writing. In your Google Classroom, in your classwork tab, you will find your Lesson 3 digital notebook. This video will be right next to your digital notebook once it is complete. Open your digital notebook. Notice this digital notebook is 10 pages long. Also, Mr. Smith and myself have added for the quiz questions the highlighting of yellow. So the last digital notebook for the quiz questions, it was just a red number, and now it is also highlighted to make it stand out a little bit more. Let's begin our lesson.
Lesson 3. The Assyrian and Persian Empires. Invaders swept into Mesopotamia after Hammurabi's death in 1750 BCE. Hundreds of years passed before the Assyrians, a people of northern Mesopotamia, united the region again. In time, the Assyrian Empire gave way to the powerful Persian Empire.
All right, let's watch this video, the Assyrian and Persian Empires.
To understand the scale of the Assyrian and Persian empires, it's helpful to look at them from a purely geographical viewpoint. This is a map of the Middle East. It shows where the conflicts and conquests that accompanied the rise of the first civilizations occurred. One of the world's first civilizations, Sumer, developed at the south end of the fertile valley between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. While Sumerian culture influenced the entire region, Sumer was relatively small. Then the Babylonians conquered Sumer. The Babylonian Empire was more than double the area of the Sumerian Empire. Still, the Babylonian boundaries, like those of Sumer, did not extend far beyond the banks of the two rivers. The Assyrians were next to rise and conquer. Notice how much the Assyrian Empire grew. It expanded beyond the boundaries of the two rivers that had defined the Sumerian and Babylonian empires, but it never expanded too far from water, always staying within the reach of the coastlines of the Mediterranean Sea, the Persian Gulf, or the banks of the Nile River. How did the Assyrians expand their empire so much? One answer was their military advantages. They had some of the world's first horse-mounted fighters, or cavalry, which made them faster and more mobile than their enemies. They also had iron weapons, which were superior to the bronze weapons used by other people in the region. And the Assyrians had developed what some historians call an ancient superweapon, the chariot. Chariots were a military adaptation of the Sumerian wheeled cart. Chariots carried both a driver and a spearman quickly into battle. The size of the Assyrian Empire at its height was impressive, but it seemed small in comparison to the empire the Persians built. Look closely at the map. Do you see how the Persian Empire differed geographically from the earlier empires? It included vast areas of land that were not near major sources of water. It's not hard to guess the secret to the Persian success. Once again, they had a superior military. The Greek historian Herodotus tells us that the Persian army consisted of more than 1.5 million infantrymen, which included an elite force of 10,000 soldiers known as the Immortals. Of course, the Immortals weren't actually immortal. They only seemed that way to their enemies. You see, whenever one of the Immortals was wounded or killed, he was immediately replaced by another warrior who had been held in reserve. This kept the force at a constant 10,000-man strength and gave enemies the impression that the Assyrian warriors were immortal. Every empire was larger than the one before it. What problems did this create for each empire's rulers?
All right, back to our video. At the bottom of this first page are the guiding questions. We are going to skip those. We also have our 5 vocab words. On page 1 of your digital notebook, please define these words using either Savas here or the PowerPoint I have made for you. We have cavalry, soldiers who fight while riding horses, standing army, a permanent army of professional soldiers, tribute, payment or gift to a stronger power, currency, money, something used for exchange, and steel, grand stone pillar. Please pause my video and take time to get these words defined now. All right, moving on to page 2 of your digital notebook. Press next one time in Savas. Again, get rid of this extra little wall and let's go into how did the Assyrian and Neo-Babylonian empires develop?
How did the Assyrian and Neo-Babylonian empires develop? Assyria lay north of Babylon, along the Tigris River. Like much of Mesopotamia, it fell under the influence of Sumer. Later, Assyria was part of the Akkadian and Babylonian empires. Why was Assyria known as a military state? After Babylonia fell, the Assyrians fought against a steady stream of invaders. Some of them conquered Assyria, but for long periods, the Assyrians stayed free. Assyria's armies included some of the world's earliest cavalry, or soldiers who fight while riding horses. Assyrians used iron weapons and tools, which were stronger than the bronze ones. The Assyrians built up a strong military state by the mid-800s BCE. Within 200 years, they turned that state into an empire. By the mid-600s BCE, the Assyrian Empire stretched north from the Persian Gulf across the entire Fertile Crescent and southwest into Egypt.
All right, page 2 of our digital notebook, number 1. Please notice it is marked that it is a quiz question. You will find the quiz answer in the circled yellow text. So a cavalry is made up of what? Pause my video and get that answer now.
Political order in the empire. Like Sargon and Hammurabi, Assyrian rulers found that controlling a large empire was difficult. The Assyrians divided the empire into about 70 smaller units of government called provinces. They assigned a governor to each province. Each governor reported directly to the Assyrian ruler. This helped the ruler keep control of distant lands. An Assyrian ruler named Ashurbanipal made the city of Nineveh his capital. There he built a library and filled it with cuneiform tablets. They were mainly texts and letters from Sumer and Babylonia on subjects such as law, literature, mathematics, and science. Some 20,000 of these tablets survive today.
Number 2, how did the Assyrians try to solve the problem of ruling a large empire? You will find that answer in this first paragraph highlighted in blue.
How was Babylon restored? After Ashurbanipal's death, civil war and enemy attacks weakened the Assyrian Empire. In 604 BCE, Nebuchadnezzar II became king of Babylon. He expanded his power as far west as Egypt. He also captured Jerusalem, destroyed the Jewish temple, and exiled many Jews to Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar's empire is known as the Neo-Babylonian Empire. Nebuchadnezzar spent much money building great walls, gates, and temples. His most famous project was the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. The Hanging Gardens were elaborate gardens built on a series of stone terraces.
Question 3, how did Nebuchadnezzar strengthen Babylon's defenses? Pause my video. That answer is in the green highlighted text. Here is a picture of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon that you just learned about in that excerpt. Moving on to page 3 of your digital notebook, you will click Next one more time to get to the next page. Again, remove the wall if you need to by clicking the arrow to the right.
How did the Persian Empire rise? Babylon's thick walls and strong gates were not able to keep out new conquerors. In 539 BCE, Babylon and the rest of Mesopotamia fell under the control of the powerful Persian Empire. That empire soon became the largest the world had ever seen. Although the names of the Persian Empire changed over time depending on who was ruling, the empire itself stayed in existence for over 1,000 years. It dominated much of southwestern Asia and sometimes even Egypt between 500 BCE and 630 CE. It had great political and cultural influence over Western Asia during these centuries.
Question number 1. What evidence supports the idea that the Persians built a great empire? Maybe the longevity of it, how long it lasted, you might want to look at. So in the pink highlighted text, you will find that answer. Question number 2, analyze this image. These archers decorated the palace of a Persian emperor. So infer, what do you think? What can you conclude about the Persian armies from this image?
It had great political. Cyrus the Great. Persia formed to the east of Mesopotamia in what is now Iran. For years, the Persians had been ruled by their neighbors to the north, a people called the Medes. But in 550 BCE, Cyrus the Great led the Persians to victory over the Medes. By conquering the Medes, the Persians won an empire. Cyrus fought to create an even larger empire. He began in Asia Minor, in what is now Turkey, fighting the kingdom of Lydia. He defeated Lydia's rich king, Croesus. Then Cyrus pushed south into Ionia, a region settled by Greeks. One by one, he conquered Ionia's city-states. Later, Cyrus expanded Persia's border in the east toward India. Persia's rapid growth was due to its large and highly skilled standing army. A standing army is a permanent army of professional soldiers. The core of this army was a force of 10,000 elite soldiers, known as the Immortals.
Number 1, how did Cyrus the Great win and then expand his empire? For that answer, you can see this blue highlighted text. Pause my video and get that answer now. Number 2, who were the Immortals? Notice this is a quiz question. In this yellow circled text, you will find that answer.
West of Babylon. Cyrus and the Persian army captured Babylon in 539 BCE. Under his rule, Babylon grew into the wealthiest province of the Persian Empire. In general, Cyrus treated the Babylonians and other conquered peoples well. He allowed them to keep their own customs and religions rather than forcing them to adopt Persian ways. For example, when Cyrus conquered Babylon, he allowed the Jewish people to return to Jerusalem and rebuild their temple.
Page 5, number 1. What do you think Cyrus allowed conquered peoples to keep their own customs and religions? In this green highlighted text, you will get an idea as to why he may have let that happen. Pause my video and get that now.
Further development. Cyrus died in a battle in 530 BCE. His son, Cambyses II, continued his father's dream of increasing the size of the Persian Empire. First, Cambyses invaded northeast Africa and conquered Egypt. From there, he traveled south to try to capture Kush, but failed. Cambyses marched the Persian army through the desert with little food or other supplies. Soon his men were forced to kill and eat their pack animals. Many Persians died of starvation. After Cambyses died, Darius took the Persian throne by force. Under his rule, Persia grew even larger, and Darius became known as Cyrus the Great. He extended Persian rule east to the Indus Valley. In the west, the Persian army defeated Thrace, which was the first Persian victory in Europe. But later campaigns against Greece ended in Persia's defeat at the Battle of Marathon. Reading.
Number 2, what was the result of the invasion of Cush by Cambyses? In this blue highlighted text, you will find that answer. All right, moving on to page 6 of your digital notebook. We are going to click next one more time. We are now going to talk about Cyrus the Great. So what I want you to do, you have page 6 in your digital notebook, but what I want you to do is read through this on your own. There are 5 things to know about Cyrus the Great. When you are finished reading, that is when you will answer these 2 questions. What do you think is the cleverest decision that Cyrus made and why? So cleverest means smart. And question number 2, what did Cyrus do that convinced the Persians to call him the Great? You may have to infer this, but go ahead and answer these 2 questions. Page 7 on the digital notebook. We will click next one more time. If you are starting this from the beginning of Savas, you will click next 5 times total to get, this is actually click number 4. This is an interactive gallery. This, we're just going to look at these. So pause my video, and what I want you to do is click on each picture. This picture talks about the iron weapons. Read through the iron weapons. The next picture talks about the chariots and the siege towers. The bottom left picture talks about the Persian army. The middle bottom picture talks about the imperial capital. And the bottom right picture talks about Zoroastrianism. Please click through each picture, read a little bit about them. The top 2 are the Assyrian Empire, and the bottom 3 are about the Persian Empire. When you are finished with that, come on back to my video. So on the 5th click now, again, remove this wall if you need to. Persia's government and religion. Notice before I even click play that these 2 questions are on the quiz.
Persia's government and religion. The vast Persian Empire included peoples with many different cultures. Persian rulers had to find a way to unify the empire. They might have tried to force people to follow the same customs and same laws. The Persians took a different approach, however. Local self-government. Darius created a political structure that gave local people some control over their own government. Darius divided his empire into satrapies, or provinces, and chose a leader for each one. Darius allowed them to keep their local laws and traditions and make many of their own decisions. Central control. Darius also reformed the empire's central, or overall, government. First, he improved its finances. Conquered peoples had always sent tribute to the Persian ruler. Tribute is payment made to show loyalty to a stronger power, but the amount of tribute was often set by the ruler.
Okay, we're going to pause there. Number 1, how did Darius govern over the vast Persian Empire? You will find that answer under this local self-government. I have it circled in yellow. Find that answer and come on back when you are finished. Number 2, what was tribute? You will find that answer in this second circled yellow section. Notice that both of these questions are on the quiz. Pause my video and find those answers now.
But the amount before Darius, Persian rulers often showed no concern for what a region could really afford to pay. Darius created a fairer system in which each province paid according to its wealth. Next, Darius created a common currency. Currency is money that is used as a medium of exchange, usually bills or coins. Darius introduced gold coins, printed with an image of himself, that would be accepted across the Persian Empire as payment for goods. The currency helped unify the Persian economy by making it easier for distant provinces to trade with one another.
Question 3 on page 8 of your digital notebook. What effect did creating a common currency have on Darius's empire? For that answer, you will find it in this highlighted green text.
New roads. Darius used some of Persia's great wealth to build roads across the empire. Trade goods and tribute traveled on these roads. So did armies, government officials, and royal messengers. The Persians set up postal stations along the 1,500-mile-long Great Royal Road. Messengers on horseback brought messages from one station to the next. It took 3 months for a message to travel from one end of the road to another. Still, the Persian system was the fastest communication system in the ancient world. The Greek historian Herodotus wrote, primary source. Nothing mortal travels so fast as these Persian messengers. These men will not be hindered from accomplishing at their best speed the distance which they have to go, either by snow or rain or heat or by the darkness of night. From the Persian Wars by Herodotus, translated by George Rawlinson.
Number 4, how long was the Great Royal Road? How long was the Great Royal Road? That answer you will find in the pink highlighted text.
Religion. In ancient times, most people worshipped many gods. But beginning around 600 BCE, a Persian man known as Zoroaster taught that there is one supreme god, Ahura Mazda, who has an evil opponent. Over time, Zoroaster's beliefs developed into the religion Zoroastrianism. Zoroastrianism eventually became the official religion of the empire, although conquered people could worship their own gods. The sacred text of Zoroastrianism is the Avesta, which includes prayers, hymns, and other writings. Zoroastrianism's central belief is that the universe is in a state of struggle between the forces of good and evil. Zoroastrians believe that people have an important role to play in this conflict by working for good. They also believe in the existence of an afterlife. Historians think that these teachings later influenced Judaism, Christianity, and Islam.
Page 9 of your digital notebook.
Arts of Mesopotamia. Unlike art produced by earlier world cultures, the arts of ancient Mesopotamia give us a glimpse of daily life, as you saw on the Standard of Ur. They show people engaged in different activities.
Number 1, arts from ancient Mesopotamia give us a glimpse into what? You will find that answer in the highlighted blue text.
Seals. The Sumerians often used carved stone seals to identify the owner of an object, especially before the development of cuneiform writing. A seal left the owner's personal mark, such as an animal or a geometric shape, stamped in clay. For example, a sack containing trade goods might be tied closed with a string. Then the owner would cover the knot with wet clay and stamp the clay with the seal. Some seals were shaped like cylinders or tubes. When rolled over wet clay, the seals left the image of an entire scene. Sculptures. Sumerians also carved statues of people that, for the first time in history, looked like real humans. Other peoples created a form of sculpture known as relief. In relief sculpture, the scene sticks out from the surface of the base material. Many relief sculptures were carved on stele. A stele is a carved stone slab or pillar that stands on end. A famous example is the stele of Hammurabi. At the top of this stele is a relief showing Hammurabi and the Babylonian god Shamash. Below the relief is Hammurabi's code, carved in cuneiform. The Assyrians created large, colorful reliefs on the sides of buildings. They decorated structures with colorful tiles and bricks that formed elaborate patterns and images of real and imagined animals. Assyrians also decorated walls with cone-shaped pieces of baked clay painted in white, black, and red.
Page 9 on your digital notebook, number 2. What is a stele? Notice it is yellow. It is a quiz question. The answer is circled in yellow in your Savas e-textbook. All right, last page of our digital notebook. Number 3, I want you to analyze this image. So creatures like this decorated many Assyrian palaces. What 3 types of beings make up this imaginary creature? So look at this sculpture, this whatever, and what 3 things is this made up of? I'll tell you one thing is a human, right? So here's a human. You have then a couple other things, animal types. So what makes up this sculpture? Go ahead and answer that question for number 3 on page 9. All right, so the last page is page 10, where you were talking about this image. So let's go back and look at the questions that are on your quiz. We have page 1, all 5 of your vocab words are on the quiz. Page 2, number 1. Page 4, number 2. Page 7, number 1 and 2. These are both on your quiz. And page 9, number 2.